Let's say you approve a sole source for something. Like, what's the worst that could happen?
That's an interesting question.
Like a protest, probably.
Yeah,
right?
protest, vendor protest. It's, and then we degrade our reputation for being a fair and ethical procurement entity.
Yeah, that's a great point.
We have to, we want businesses to do business with us.
Right.
We have to maintain that transparency.
Which is an interesting point. Like the idea that if you're sole sourcing contracts, other vendors look at that and they're like, ooh, I might not have a fair shake here.
I won't participate.
Yeah.
We can't get the best price. It only hurts us in the end.
Yeah. Well, Sandra, thank you for joining me today. As a brief background, you have been working as the Chief Procurement Officer for the city of Detroit. Got what I think is maybe a non-traditional entry into being a Chief Procurement Officer, a degree in urban planning from MIT, a lot of nonprofit civic engagement work, and then I think you were Deputy Director for General Services for the City of Detroit for a while, and then Director for a brief period, and then moved into being Chief Procurement Officer. So super excited to have you on the pod today and just chat about your history and what you've learned getting stuff done in government. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So give us kind of the journey. Like, what was it like coming from your work with urban planning and then in nonprofits to general services and then procurement? Like, what drew you to procurement? What drew you to government? And then what drew you to procurement?
Yeah. So like you say, I was a nonprofit in the city of Detroit for a long time, 8 years with one organization and then a lot of civic engagement. I think probably that experience working in civic engagement with Citizen Detroit, with former city council member Sheila Cockrell.
Yeah.
She had this crazy history of, I think she dropped out of college to become an activist, and then was on, and did things like chain herself to trees and things like that, and then was on city council as one of the most pragmatic and well-respected council members, who was like very fiscally responsible. And then she went into civic engagement in the nonprofit sector. And so having worked only in nonprofits, but then having this experience with somebody who had been in city government, but also in an activist role, it was so interesting to see somebody who had such a well-rounded view of the city's role, activist role, the community's role, voters' role. And it got me really interested in government. And then met a lot of people in government who were amazing and did really incredible work, like Brad Dick, my former boss, who was Director of General Services and then eventually became Chief Operating Officer. So I think seeing the hard work and also seeing like the scale and the impact and the stakes of government compared to the work that we do in nonprofit, it was a very interesting comparison.
Yeah. So massive scale. I mean, City of Detroit, obviously, like really big city, big budget, a lot of complex issues going on there. So the impact and the scale, and then just maybe being inspired by your colleague there. So when you went through general services and then into procurement, like walk us through that. What did you learn? What were the things that you thought about procurement that turned out to be true? And then what were the things that you thought about procurement that maybe turned out not to be true?
Yeah. So my role in general services was being over the business administration office. So I saw my role as making sure that the rest of my department, which was really expansive, right? We were doing blight remediation, facilities, fleet for the whole city, recreation, parks, making sure that they had the resources that they needed to provide the services that they were supposed to, right? And a big part of that was knowing the budget backwards and forwards, getting the contracts in place, and making sure that they had the personnel. And so a lot of our work on contracts was, we could never get them fast enough, right? So from a department standpoint, we're thinking, we can never get the contracts fast enough. And we're sending this information about what we want into this black hole. We don't know what happens to it. And why does it take so long, and why do they keep coming back and asking me for more information, right?
Yeah.
We can never get...
They meaning procurement.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. Or they'll kick it back and say you did it wrong, or, what have
Yeah.
you. And
Yeah.
and now, and so I will say that many people did agree with you. Oh, what is she doing coming into procurement with this background?
Yeah.
And especially my staff who were career procurement professionals.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very important to me, and I came to really appreciate the hard work that goes into procurement. There is, we're about to send out solicitation to suppliers.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this one where I had somebody on my team that said, we need tents. And that's all they submitted to procurement.
Tents.
Yeah, I need tents.
Okay.
And then procurement came back and said, well, what kind of tents? And how should they be fixed? And how many? And what material do you need?
Yeah.
Lots of things that from a department, I'm like, I just need tents.
Yeah. Right.
And from procurement, knowing that we've got to be able to communicate to the supplier exactly what we need so that they can put their best foot forward.
Right. And what's the central point there? Is it, do you find that departments, when they're planning, like, are they looking, do the requests need to be better structured, or do they need to be more clear in their own minds about what they need?
I think it's a combination of several things. It's definitely planning ahead.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we've done, my deputy and I, is kind of reorganize our team so that every major department has a contact point and are meeting regularly to plan ahead.
Got it.
So that we can take the time to be thoughtful in our solicitations. And but yes, a lot of time there's turnover in departments. There are people who might have gotten the hang of putting together a good solicitation, but they might get promoted, they might go to another job, and then a new person comes in, they have to be trained again. And so we've, tried to really push our team to be helpful and communicate and collaborative in helping the department get what they need.
Which I think you bring up a really interesting point that I'd love to explore a little bit more. So the idea that, like, you are partnering, you have a person on your team that's partnering with one or more departments, you've kind of got that direct coverage. How, like, from a vendor's perspective on the outside, one of the perceptions, I think, is, like, if I'm just finding out about an RFP when it drops, I'm probably too late. There's probably someone who's been in there who's, like, at least has a relationship or is influencing the scope, or maybe not even nefariously, right? Like, they're just trying to understand the business requirements and the outcomes that the department's trying to do. And when the solicitation gets shaped or drafted, it's kind of like, slanted in their favor. That's often what I hear from vendors. I'm not saying that's, your experience. So with that in mind, with that perception from vendors in mind, how would you recommend that a vendor kind of, like, engages with the city, with the departments, with procurement? What's the right way to do that? And also, if there's a wrong way to do it?
That's a really good question. I think probably important for me to start from procurement principles. We're trying to be fair, transparent, and open.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that whatever we're communicating openly and in the same way at the same time to everybody, to every potential supplier.
Yep.
That's why we do the outreaches, to try to share about the type of things that we purchase. I would love for us to get to a place where we can do a procurement forecast.
Yeah.
Where we're communicating or signaling to suppliers 6 months or a year in advance the types of things that we are going to be purchasing.
Yeah.
We do publish our contracts. And so, like, looking at those end dates, you can kind of anticipate that 6 months to a year in advance, we're going to be putting out solicitations.
Yep.
Sometimes they have renewals baked in, but, there are certain departments like Public Works. They're going to put out their design contracts and then their street work contracts, every year.
Yeah.
You can kind of anticipate that. But I think it's the one-on-one conversations where you might get information before anybody else or more than anybody else. Those are the kind of things that we would try to avoid.
Yeah. And that's definitely, so as I think about the life cycle of a project, right? Like at some point, even take vendors out of it for a moment, like the city's coming up with its strategic plan, right? Or each department has its plan and they're working on that internally and figuring out, what are the priorities for the next year, tying that into the budget, priorities for the next 5 years maybe, or however long you all plan. Those departments educate themselves oftentimes, I think, by talking to the vendor community, especially if you think about like technology purchase, right? Like technology is moving so quickly that it's tough to keep up, and you might not make a purchase more than once every 5 or more years, and a lot can change in that time. So how do you find that the departments are educating themselves, specifically maybe around technology? How do they educate themselves on like what's new?
What's new, what's out there?
Yeah.
Departments do go to conferences, with their, national conferences, and there will be the tabling of vendors, and they'll learn about things. And the formal way that we would do it would be a request for information, gather information.
Do the departments do that on their own, or is that in collaboration with procurement?
In collaboration with procurement.
Yeah.
If a vendor meets with a department, we want OCP to be there to make sure, everything's above board.
OCP is central procurement.
Central procurement.
Yeah.
And, make sure they sign off, that they understand that by them providing information, there's no guarantee of a contract.
Right.
You may use this information to craft a bid.
Right. Yeah. And then how, like, if you think about the life cycle of an initiative, when does procurement start to closely partner with the various functional or business areas? Yeah,
I'm always trying to push that for more towards the beginning of that thought process. But let's say in our budget cycle, typically the budget will get approved. It'll go through this council discussion process in the spring, budget approved by about May.
Okay.
Our fiscal year starts in July. And then it takes some time to turn over that budget. And then requisitions start coming in from departments kind of between July to September, depending on the complexity of the scope that they're trying to put together.
Yeah.
And I'm pushing departments, hey, if you know that you've got that budget, let's start back in May.
Yeah.
Let's start working together in May.
Yeah. And I imagine there's only so many hours in the day, and people are busy, and there's the normal constraints there. But is there anything that comes to mind as to people that do engage, or departments that do engage earlier versus ones that don't? Like, what are some of the patterns you find there?
Yeah, it's definitely trade-offs, because departments are trying to be thoughtful. They're trying to get their research done and craft their scope. And sometimes those come to us later, right? Because they're trying to put in the research.
Yeah.
I would say, obviously, the recs are going to come in regular, are your year-over-year operating services.
Stuff that you've been doing
over and over.
Yeah.
The ones that tend to come to us a little later might be new initiatives that just got funded.
Got it. So things that are new to the budget that haven't been there before, that's the stuff that oftentimes is a little later because it's not been planned before.
Yeah, we're doing research now.
So talk to me a little bit about, okay, once you get to the place where you're ready to put out a solicitation, what's the general, maybe just high level, what's the general process? So solicitation goes out, it's got to be out there for X amount of time. What are the internal rules or parameters that you have on that?
Yeah, so typically minimum around, it's not a hard requirement, but we like to have RFPs out for 30 days to give enough time for vendors to learn about it, get a pre-bid meeting in or a site walk, give them time to ask questions, get answers, and then submit their best proposal.
Sure.
For RFQs, which are price only, those will go a little quicker, maybe 15 days.
Okay.
And then then the buyer, this is where, there's a lot of pressure to rush and push or shorten that bid time to get it moving faster. We try to make sure
From departments, you mean?
Yeah. But we try to make sure, in order to not have to put it back out, let's give enough time to the supplier.
What would make you need to put it back out?
Let's say it wasn't enough time for a complex bid, and we didn't get responses because everybody needed more time, or we rushed and the scope wasn't totally what you needed it to be, and you got responses that didn't meet your needs.
Didn't meet the need. Yeah. Okay.
And so I think the curve, taking a little more time up front helps us not have to take more time on the back end.
And when do the rubrics get defined? Like, is that something that you all create? Like when the solicitation goes out, you know how you're gonna, you know how you're gonna grade it.
Right. That's another principle of public procurement, ethical public procurement, is that we publish our evaluation criteria, the relative weights, so that suppliers know exactly what you're evaluating.
That goes with the solicitation.
That goes out with the solicitation.
Is that something, what percent of procurement departments, impossible question for you to answer, but is that a common practice, do you find?
I think it's required for public procurement.
In the state of Michigan or just nationwide?
Just generally, some of our procurement principles roll down from federal requirements. So we're supposed to publish our evaluation criteria and at least their relative weights to each other when we publish a bid.
Got it. So walk us through. So you put the solicitation out, you get enough, respondents, and now you have to sift through all these responses and try to figure out which one's the winner. Walk us through.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have to name names, but walk us through a recent example of one of those that you just went through.
Well, so the buyer would unseal the bid.
Department.
No, my buyer.
Oh, okay.
So the buyers are contracting officers or specialists that work in OCP, Office of Contracts and Procurement. In City of Detroit, procurement is centralized in our division. And so only the buyer would have access to the responses, and they would unseal it, meaning that even nobody can see what the responses are until the bid is closed.
Got it.
And then the buyer would go through and review for minimum qualifications and are they responsive. Sometimes somebody has submitted something, but it
doesn't meet the requirements.
It doesn't meet the requirements, or there's no proposal, or key things are missing.
Sure.
So they'll go through, and then they will make sure that there's an evaluation committee.
Okay. So step one, remove the non-responsive ones. Cut it down to the set that are responsive. And now we go into the committee.
Right. So it'll be multiple people from the managing department, and depending on the type of bid, there might be other departments involved. So for technology, for example, it's always IT plus the department.
Yep.
Plus the buyer, and they'll review together. And then we do consensus-based evaluation, walking through the criteria that have been published. And then the highest ranked vendor will be selected to move forward with. Now, we do have local preferences.
Okay.
So in our city ordinance, because of the city's desire to support doing business with local businesses, we have extra points on an RFP or percentage discounts in an RFQ that are applied to each proposer that has a valid certificate. The Office of Civil Rights, Inclusion, and Opportunity is the certifying agency.
Yeah.
And so if a vendor comes to us and submits a valid certificate from CREO, then we'll apply those equalization credits.
Got it. Yeah, and I think this is a conversation I've had with other procurement folks, and maybe even you over the years, but what's the cycle time for that? In order for a business to get approved as a local business, let's say I'm one of these folks. I might not know that I need to go through that process, and that process might take 45 days.
Yep.
And then I find out about this RFP that's out for 30 days, and I'm cooked. Is that a thing?
Yes, absolutely. So, if you want your certificate to be valid at the time of bid close. You've got to already be certified. So yes, that's a very important point. 45-day cycle time with CREO for your certificates, and you have to submit a certificate to be eligible to get the points.
So that goes with the bid?
Yes, submitted with the bid.
Got it. And I think this is probably the case, but just to confirm, it's not good enough to say, I'm working through this process right now. It's got to be done.
Yeah, yeah.
Got it. So there's different, and that's an important point. So the initiative or the kind of the impetus for the local preferences, local business, and you're willing, I guess in the case of an RFQ, to pay a little bit more for a local vendor. What is that discount amount? Right.
So we recently had an amendment to our procurement ordinance. We used to have a sliding scale, so percentages based on the amount of the contract. But now, as of February 2025, oh no, I'm sorry. This was an earlier amendment, and at the end of 2024, part of responsible bidding, we added 2 new credits for construction workforce development and construction workforce investment. This is providing benefits and then having a apprenticeship. But all of our base credits for Detroit-based headquartered resident got increased and no longer a sliding scale. So you get 5.
Binary.
Sorry?
Meaning it's binary now? Is that what you mean?
Well, it doesn't depend on the amount of the contract. You just get a flat 5%. If you're a Detroit headquartered, 5% for Detroit resident base, which means at least 30% of your workforce is Detroit resident.
Okay.
2% if you're Detroit based, and so on.
What areas of contracting does that apply to? Does that apply? I mean, you mentioned construction and infrastructure, but does that apply equally to all?
So, as long as the funding source does not prohibit the use of local preferences. So for a long time, for example, a lot of federal funds don't, we don't use local preferences on federal funds, but
that's a fact. So if there's $1 of federal funding in the project, you can't do local.
We won't use local preferences.
And is that funding source announced as part of the RFP?
Depends, but grant sources will usually say this is ARPA funded. FTA funded, just a long list of requirements. CDBG funded, the requirements are so long. We will share what those funding sources are, and this is why we have so many requirements. But it's only the construction credits are particular to the type of service that we're purchasing. And then the rest are generally applicable as long as we're using a funding source where we can. And there is a cap on how much more that we'll pay. So the
cap in terms of dollars?
Yes, we won't pay, by ordinance, we won't pay more than 12% or $100,000 more than the lowest actual bidder.
Got it. Whichever is lower.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. 12% or $100K on any given purchase is the max amount of credit that a local vendor could receive.
Right.
And then to talk about pricing for a moment, have you, I guess I'm just curious if you have any rules or maybe guidelines in your mind about how you know you're getting a fair price. Is it based on the number of bidders that you have? Is it, are there any certain criteria that you look for and you're like, this is not going to be the best possible price we can get? Just from your experience, I think you said there's $1 billion of contracts a year that your office is managing. So any thoughts that you've or heuristics that you've developed over the years?
Yeah. So, if we do a bid, we get at least 3 bids, then we have a price comparison.
Okay.
If we get a single bid, we'll do additional work. We'll look at cooperatives. We'll look at past pricing, past purchases. We might do research with other entities on what they're paying.
So just to make sure I understand, you're saying if there are 3 responses to any given bid, you're like, cool, we'll just take, whatever the best price is, or we will assume that these prices are market prices. If you get fewer than 3 respondents, you would do past analysis, co-op analysis, just to make sure that those 2 were won bids that you got.
Right. And always balanced against our budget as well.
Right.
So even if we have enough responses, if it doesn't work for our budget, then we've got to do some extra work.
Yeah. Okay. What is that extra work? Like, what are there data sources that you leverage for that?
Yeah. So there are, there are departments that do the same type of work over and over and over. So we have a big history, our own internal database of prices paid. I'm always looking at cooperative pricing because they've got the volume purchases.
Yep.
And so, that's always a resource.
Cool. And just to maybe build on the point about co-ops, how do you, I think a lot of folks, when they're thinking about government contracting, they assume everything goes through an RFP, like a live RFP each time. Co-ops, of course, for anyone who's not familiar, I know you are very familiar, they're pre-solicitations. So it's kind of, a various group throughout the country will do this, put together an RFP for, could be cloud software or fill in the blank, some public safety product. And they will do, a cooperative purchase on behalf of NASPO or Omnia, or there's all these different contract vehicles that exist, so that entities get volume pricing like you were describing. So walk us through that. Like, do you have preferences? Is there a preferred path to procurement that you like to do, or how do the departments think about it too? Would the departments have a different answer from you?
Yeah, with departments, I think it's often as quick as possible, right? Yeah.
So things that can shorten the cycle is kind of where the departments lean.
For OCP, the standard is to bid, right? Yeah. Competitively bid. And in Detroit, especially, where we're trying to make sure we expand opportunities for local businesses. Yeah. Cooperatives are, there are trade-offs, right? Obviously, the benefits of the volume purchase and the streamlined contracting timeline. But, and so for that reason, the MyDeal cooperative resource, so the state's statewide contracting resource, is one that we do look to frequently because they, for the most part, I think they do their own bids. Yeah. They do try really hard to contract with Michigan companies. I think for us, cooperatives are most useful when we can compare, a bid that we have and get better pricing. Yep. When we can piggyback MyDeal, or in the case of, sometimes there are sole sources. Yeah. But we can get a better price from a cooperative than we could from our own individual bid. Yeah. And then sometimes there are, I think this is an area that we're exploring a little more, where if there's no local vendor that can provide the good or service that we're looking for, then the cooperative could be a good option. Yeah. And how do you think about past performance? Because I know for a lot of different contracts, they might say, you need to have 3 years of government experience, or, things like that. How do you think about, past performance, and what is a, qualified vendor? So, past performance is so important. I think it's not necessarily that you have to have a history of performance with us. If a history of performance can be demonstrated otherwise. Yeah. So, for example, I was just having this conversation with our facilities group, and they're looking for reliable facilities, general contractors, and we have hundreds of buildings. Some of them are highly secure. Some of them are 24/7 operations.
Yeah.
We might need you right away.
Yep.
They're public access buildings. And so if you can demonstrate that you have worked on a large portfolio with like immediate response required at times,
Yeah.
that could help us get a better sense of your capacity. In terms of past performance, I think capacity is a big component of it.
Yeah.
Are you capable
Yeah.
of providing the scale of the service that we need?
For sure. Yeah. So is that, because we had a recent conversation with Jared Ambrosier from the state, and one of the things he talked about was size and scope, right?
Yeah.
So, he made the point that like if you are a vendor that has a contract, for instance, with like a big insurance company, and it's a nationwide contract, he was making the point that maybe a lot of people perceive past performance to be a binary thing. Either I have 3 years of government experience or I don't. And if I don't, I'm not going to apply. He was advocating for folks to not think of it that way, to think of it as like a gradient, right? It's not a black and white thing. Is that how you think about it too? So like in your rubrics, could you get partial credit?
Yeah. So usually in our minimum qualifications, we'll say X number of years of experience providing services or goods at similar scope and scale. So it's not necessarily that you have to have worked with the government before.
Yeah.
If there is similarity in scope and scale.
Yeah. Public access, secure buildings, things like that in the facilities.
Scale of the portfolio. Right. And let's see. So, but then in our evaluation criteria, we will definitely rate the quality of that experience and capacity. We might ask for your staffing levels, your equipment, your org chart. And so those will be,
totally
rated.
Yeah, that seems fair. And that's a good way, I think, to get a window into what someone's capable of doing, even if they don't necessarily have a contract with the city of Detroit. Okay, so one of the things you mentioned when you were answering was sole sourcing. I just wanted to double click on that for a second.
Yeah.
How does sole sourcing work? And is it woven into like city code, what you can sole source for? So
the code does mention sole source if certified by the CPO.
Okay.
And
so you personally have to sign on it and say, we're cool to sole source this.
Me or my delegate, the deputy, depending on the dollar threshold.
Okay.
And we look at certain categories. And I want to say that the categories are described in the code as well. So we're looking for, there are certain times where the sole source is dead obvious, right? We have an entire system. We need OEM replacement parts, and the manufacturer does not authorize any other distributor. And they write a letter on the letterhead. Or they have a single distributor. But if there are multiple distributors, even if we need an OEM product, we'll put it out to bid. If there's a situation right now where the entire countywide prosecutors and police departments are using a certain software, and so our legal department needs to be able to hook into that. So they're going to, get that same software. There are situations where you'll have like a single authorized vendor for a nationwide network of ballistics tracking, and we have a letter from the ATF. So we'll use that to make sure we can continue.
Of course, to
do that work.
Got it. So basically, what I'm hearing is that you kind of have to prove that there's really, truly a sole source.
Absolutely. And really thoroughly document it.
And just so we're clear, like I think it's helpful for vendors to maybe have empathy for that decision that you're making, you or your deputy are making, is like, what are the consequences of getting that wrong? Let's say you approve a sole source for something, like what's the worst that could happen?
That's an interesting question.
Like a protest, probably.
Yeah,
Right?
protest, vendor protest. It's, and then we degrade our reputation
Yep.
for being a fair and ethical procurement entity.
Yeah, that's a great point.
We have to, we want businesses to do business with us.
Right.
We have to maintain that transparency.
Which is an interesting point. Like the idea that if you're sole sourcing contracts, other vendors look at that and they're like, ooh, I might not have a fair shake here.
I won't participate.
Yeah.
We can't get the best price. It only hurts us in the end.
Yeah, got it. So that only emphasizes the diligence that you all have to do. One thing I wanted to ask you about too is emergency procurements, or like maybe cases where you don't have to go through the usual process. Like the one that in recent history comes to mind was the bridge collapse, in Pennsylvania, where, and I don't know the details of this, but my perception from reading about it at a high level was, the bridge was hit by a truck and got taken down, and then it was rebuilt in 2 weeks because they waived the emergency, or they waived the traditional procurement rules, and they were able to get it built back up, and it was celebrated as like a case of like government being right on the ball. What are those sort of issues from your perspective? Are there cases where, there are exemptions to the procurement rules, and what are those? And I imagine those are spelled out in code.
Right. So in our code, emergency procurements can be allowed where there is an imminent a threat to public health, safety, or welfare,
Okay.
and certified by the CPO.
Okay.
When we do these, to the extent practicable, we still compete.
Okay.
So it might not go through the formal solicitation process you normally required for a dollar threshold.
Yeah.
It might not go through the full approval process of city council approval prior to the purchase. So we're, those sides of it, we're speeding up.
Yeah.
But we still do try to compete for price. Now it depends on, how imminent
Sure.
that threat is. And then sometimes there are emergency procurements may be based on a prior competitively bid current contractor and adding the scope of a particular emergency that happened.
Sure. Okay. So an example of that might be, I'm making this up, but something during COVID. You already had an existing
Right.
vendor.
Or the flooding. Uh-huh.
Right.
So we have existing vendors with their prices from a competitive bid, and we're assigning them to
order,
this.
Basically. Yeah. Okay, cool. One thing I'm just curious, so zooming out now. You've been doing, procurement for a while, worked in general services, have experience outside of government. Is there anything that comes to mind in terms of like opportunities to improve procurement that you think would be, things that haven't been done yet, or like a magic wand that you wish you had? And if there's not, is there anything that you think of as like maybe I was skeptical of that requirement, but now I get it?
Yeah. So 2 separate questions, and I'll answer both. In terms of, being skeptical of certain requirements, and now I get it. A lot of the risk-based requirements, like asking for financial statements to make sure a company actually has the capacity and wherewithal to do the work that you're wanting them to do, or insurance requirements. Let's say even the dollar amount is small, but if you're taking kids on a bus somewhere, for $5,000, we want that insurance.
Yeah.
Notarized affidavits about conflicts of interest, non-collusion. All of this is like extra work, and it adds time and work for everybody. But I get them. Yeah.
Totally.
So those things. And your first question, which was about
the magic wand.
Magic wand.
Yeah.
Magic wand. I wish we could all be perfect communicators. Right. And, I think some of the things that we have to go the extra mile on is, we have these systems, whether it's Oracle or procurement or whatever, and they have all these like default emails that go out to suppliers, and we're just on the buyer side clicking buttons and, expecting those communications to be perfect.
Yeah.
But I'm always pushing my team, go in as the test supplier, see what you get.
Yeah.
If you get this email, does it make sense to you? If you click the buttons, does it go where you think it will go?
Right.
How many steps does it get to take to find the bid?
Yeah.
And in our social media outreach, if you get this in your supplier, do you know what to do next?
Yeah.
That communication piece is so important.
Yeah, so critical. I mean, everyone gets a million emails, and if it doesn't sound relevant, mark it as red, and then maybe now you have one fewer bidder, and you're like, oh, maybe now you have less than 3, right? Like, so you're basically, at the end of the day, you're trying to get more businesses engaged.
Yeah, I mean, one simple example is that we were sending out these emails that had so many links in them, right? But 2 of the prominent ones was, do you intend to participate in the bid? Yes or no? A vendor would click yes. And so many of our new vendors thought they had bid by clicking yes.
That was it, yeah.
Because any of the other buttons that you click take you to a login page and nobody can remember how to get in.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, just I think making it as easy as possible maybe is the headline there, and the tools that we use sometimes in order to do that. This was insanely insightful, Sandra. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate you doing it. Thanks for spending the time.
Thank you.